Hey YouTube, it's been a long time since I've uploaded a video. Usually on this channel I've done some basic reviews of technology. This time I want to start to shift to lectures. So over the last several years, more or less the last 10 years, I've been studying philosophy. And the last 6 years I've been doing it academically at a university. And so my videos are going to start to shift towards more of a brief lecture. I've had the opportunity to learn from a philosopher who worked in one of the best departments of philosophy in the world, and who worked with one of the best Wittgenstein scholars and analytic scholars in the tradition. And I've I've been so educated from him, and I love philosophy, and I want to share what I've been given. I think that someone like that might be critical of what I'm doing, sharing this on YouTube. I just want to have a brief response that this problem doesn't start with YouTube. It starts with the written word, as we learn from Plato. There's criticisms that the Egyptian king had one of his citizens that wrote the written word, and he thought that this great invention was going to help people, and he said, look, you're just going to really remove my people's critical thinking skills, in that they're just going to be able to pick this thing up and not exercise their memory at all, because the spoken word, oral history, is how we exercised thinking. Well, this is kind of a return to that, I guess. Nevertheless, the problems start with the written word. They don't start with YouTube. They don't start with Facebook. That said, I want to caution that I don't have a social media presence. I want this kind of thing that I'm going to do to lead people to, maybe not everybody's in a position where they can go to a university or a good liberal arts college. What I'm going to be doing is educating you in a way a good liberal arts college would. And I'm going to give you the ability to think critically, rigorously, and robustly on any given topic. And that's what philosophy does. And nothing is free from philosophy. And philosophy is characterized not as information, but understanding itself. Philosophy is just understanding. And logic, and obviously, nothing is free from truth or falsity or logic or soundness or robustness or rigorousness, which we get from philosophy. So I want to share that with people, and we'll see if this is successful or not. And I just wanted to give a brief counter argument to any potential criticism that might be given about what I'm doing. So that being said, a brief bit about myself. I've been studying philosophy, like I said, more or less for the last 10 years, academically for the last 6 years, which should only take 4 years, but my academic career has been punctuated by my military career and other interests that all nevertheless led me back to philosophy. It's philosophy that I love, and I hope to be able to educate you. And I'm concerned about a lot of things happening in the world, and I want to give a voice of critical thinking. I am nonpartisan. I do not belong to explicitly a Republican or a Democrat party or to a political party. I will not make choices that have anything to do with partisanism. That is, I will not make a choice merely to vote for a candidate because he's a Republican or a conservative. I'm a philosopher. The etymology of that word is the love of truth and wisdom. I am a philosopher through and through. I'm not a 9-to-5 philosopher. So I will follow the argument upon reflection, which seems best to me. That's the kind of man I am, like Plato, like Socrates. So I hope to bring critical thinking back into American politics, and I'm going to discuss the Second Amendment. And what you're going to get in this lecture is not a scholarly treatment per se of the Second Amendment, because I'm not a constitutional scholar, nor am I a legal scholar. But nevertheless, I've been doing this long enough, philosophy, that I have something to say. It's given me the tools and capacities to be taken seriously about the things that I utter and say. So, as you know, the Second Amendment is the right to bear arms. And let me start with President Biden, who in his campaign said, if you ask constitutional scholars, they will tell you, and I can reference them, that amending or doing away with the Second Amendment is not possible. That is, the Second Amendment is a primary and properly basic amendment in our Constitution. The Constitution of the United States of America has been the blueprint for democracies across the world. As of late, India, you will pick up one of these democratic constitutions, and more or less it will mirror the United States Constitution. Before our Constitution, the Magna Carta inspired our Constitution. Nevertheless, we were the first to get it up and running successfully. As you know, America has had a struggle with an application, but nevertheless, we've had the principles, we've just struggled with application. And just amendments are amendments that clarify the just interpretation of those amendments. So I want to give that is first of all a mere legal and democratic argument to maintain our Second Amendment. Now I want to give an intentful argument. That is, what intent our founding fathers had in producing this, or being inspired to produce or write this Second Amendment. And you've probably heard some of this. I just want to reiterate them. And again, I don't have a political agenda. My agenda is truth and justice. By justice, I don't mean retributive justice. I mean perfection. I mean goodness. I mean all the values integrated, all of them, interdefined and integrated, as Ronald Dworkin would say in his book, Is Democracy Possible Here? So I don't mean merely retributive justice. When I use the word just, I mean good, right, correct, worthy. So the Second Amendment, they had the intention that Americans, especially in a blooming democracy and somewhat a fragile or vulnerable democracy, that we've never more or less been successful at making safe today. And so we may argue, well, then we can get away with the weapons. But that was only a partial intent. So, what is tyranny? Tyranny is unfettered freedom. Tyranny is when a government or a people can do whatever they want. But as you and I know, in a democracy, freedom is not the right to do whatever you want. That's tyranny. A good definition of freedom would be something like those rights the government doesn't have to take away with you in a just democracy, the United States. I can't go and threaten or abuse people. I'm not free to do that. There are consequences and laws and officers and legislators that bar me from such a grievance. Therefore, I am not free to do whatever I want. So you understand now the difference between tyranny and a democracy. So they had intent that if we gave American citizens the right to possess a weapon, a gun, that they were giving them, American citizens, the power and great responsibility to use this weapon responsibly. That is, not misuse it, but use it proper. And we did in the American Revolution. Taxation without representation. We became independent from Britain, from Great Britain, from the most powerful military force at the time. This Second Amendment right allows just American citizens to defend against life and liberty and all the democratic rights. It's sort of a last response that the citizen has. In World War II, America dropped makeshift, what were called freedom pistols, across the war-torn nations that were occupied by the Third Reich. Why did they do this? Well, because a weapon is powerful. It's a gun. It allows you to... We fight wars. There is such a thing as just wars. You and I would agree that it is just to fight a war for freedom, for democracy, for equality, all of the values in a democracy. If that is the case, then we ought to have the right to possess a weapon, because we need to protect and maintain a democracy as a last resort. Not only that, America has, yes, regions in America, more red states perhaps more than blue, or just, I don't know if that distinction is helpful, but a tradition within our Second Amendment with sports and hunting in this country. And this wasn't such a controversial thing. You can actually find photos of John F. Kennedy gifted an AR-15 voicing that we should all American citizens, the Second Amendment is important, and they should all learn how to properly use a firearm, more or less, to paraphrase him. So this didn't become a thing or a problem, per se, until after the 70s, into the 80s, Ronald Reagan, and of course today with the rise of, or at least the media's increasing coverage of mass shootings in America and across the world. Now I want to address and speak to both, because this is about truth, this is not about politics. I want to reach both liberals, conservatives, Democrats, and Republicans, more Democrats and more liberals here. So both you and I, who is maybe anti-Second Amendment, or not even anti-Second Amendment, because as I've already demonstrated, that's not a legislative option, but let's say anti just mass shooting. I think that that's the only just criticism one could have given the argument I've given. So you can't be anti-Second Amendment. That's unjust. That's not possible, given the structure, the ruling democratic structure of our Constitution, in which the values, the form of values themselves are formed. So you could be anti-gun. So let's say that that's happening, and a liberal or a Democrat. Why? What's motivating this attitude? Well, it's safety. They want to feel safe. Of course. Please empathize. They want to feel safe. They don't want anything to do with a gun. And we'll come back to this. And they're in a grocery store and they're afraid that someone could just go and buy an AR-15 and shoot them, their children, or their family in a store or anywhere out and about, or even, God forbid, enter their home. Therefore, their concern is safety. Now, guess what? The Second Amendment rights activist or NRA activist or just law-abiding Second Amendment citizen, gun owner, value is as well in the public square. Safety. What? Both the liberal and the conservative, the Democrat and the Republican, have unity at a higher level, namely safety. Both of them want to protect themselves and their families. Where they disagree is the interpretation of how to enable safety. I hope that this is helpful in starting in American politics to have conversations where we let the truth lead it where it must. And safety is the value we share. The responsible gun owner wants to protect himself from an unjust gun user or owner, and we don't need to characterize them in that way, but he who eschews guns wants to get rid of them in order to maintain safety for himself and his family. This then becomes a question of whether that is tenable or not.